Good evening, everyone. I'd like to make a motion to reconvene from executive session. Thank you, Deb. Okay, so before we do roll call, I'd like to welcome everyone to our first Board of Education meeting for the 2021-2022 school year. This is our annual reorganization meeting and public meeting. I will chair it until the Board of Education decides and approves the new Board of Education president. So Mary, if you wouldn't mind, we'll do roll call.
Certainly. Mrs. Bays.
Present.
Dr. Block. Ms. Brooks. Here. Ms. Epstein.
Present.
Ms. Gilliar.
Present.
Ms. Melkonian. Here. Mr. Smith.
Present.
Thank you.
So Ms. Callahan, first we will administer the oath of office to our newly elected board members and myself. So Ms. Callahan, if you wouldn't mind doing the honors.
I will hand out the oaths of office and ask you individually to please read aloud and then to sign the associated card and give it back to me. Thank you.
I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of New York, and I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of BOE Trustee at Port Washington Union Free School District, Town of North Hempstead, Nassau County, Port Washington, New York, according to the best of my ability.
I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of New York, and I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of the superintendent at Port Washington Union Free School District, Town of North Hempstead, Nassau County, Port Washington, New York, according to the best of my ability.
I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of New York, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of Board of Education Trustee at Port Washington Union Free School District, Town of North Hempstead, Nassau County, Port Washington, New York, according to the best of my ability.
I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of New York, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of Board of Education Trustee at Port Washington Union Free School District, Town of North Hempstead, Nassau County, Port Washington, New York, according to the best of my ability.
So thank you, Mrs. Callahan, and congratulations to our new trustees. And next, I'd like to call for the nomination for President of the Board of Education for the 21-22 school year.
I'd like to nominate Emily Bays for president.
Anyone else? Any other nominations? Okay. Yes, we'll do count.
We need the vote. Okay. Mrs. Bays. Yes. Dr. Block.
Yes.
Ms. Brooks.
Yes.
Ms. Epstein.
Yes.
Ms. Gilliar.
Yes.
Ms. Melkonian.
Yes.
Mr. Smith. Thank you.
Okay, well, now I humbly turn the reins over of this meeting to our new Board of Education, Emily Bays.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we move on to election of vice president, so same procedure. I would like to ask for nominations for vice president. Mr. Block. Julie Epstein. Any other nominations? I need a second. Somebody second the nomination? Ms. Brooks seconds the nomination. Anybody else? Okay. Ms. Callahan, I think we get a vote.
Mrs. Bays,
Yes.
Dr. Block,
Yes.
Ms. Brooks, Ms. Epstein, Ms. Gilliard, Ms. Melkonian,
Yes.
and Mr. Smith.
Yes.
And we now need you to also do your oaths and to sign.
I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of New York, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the Office of Board of Education President at Port Washington Union Free School District, Town of North Hempstead, Nassau County, Port Washington, New York, according to the best of my ability. For Nicoletta, can you hear me? I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of New York, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the Office of Board of Education President at Port Washington Union Free School District, Town of North Hempstead, Nassau County, Port Washington, New York, according to the best of my ability.
I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of New York, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the Office of BOE Vice President at Port Washington Union Free School District, Town of North Hempstead, Nassau County, Port Washington, New York, according to the best of my ability.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on with the reorganizational agenda. I would like to make a motion to adopt the adoption of the 2021-2022 reorganizational agenda. Does someone second it? Ms. Brooks will second it. Then I would like to make a motion to adopt items 11 through 60.
I'm sorry, we need to have a vote.
Sorry,
Each time,
vote.
each
Okay,
time
first
we have a
timer
first
here.
and a
Everybody be
second.
patient. We need a vote.
Right.
So, Ms. Callahan, we can just do a
don't-
7-0.
right,
Can I
we
have
d-
raise of hands?
We don't need to do it, yes.
Okay, 7-0.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item is I would like to make a motion to adopt items 11 through 66 on the reorganizational agenda. Does anyone second? Mr. Smith seconds. And can I please have a vote? Raise a hand for votes, or unless anybody has questions before. I'll wait for
Rachel, do you have a question? Thank
She was moving through. Okay, so 11 through 66, a vote of, everybody just raise your hands again so Ms. Callahan can see.
Yeah.
We have a 7-0. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
We would then have to make, I need to make a motion to reconvene to general session, correct? So I have a second.
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Brooks, sorry, I'm looking that way. And does everybody agree that we're now reconvening into general session? Can I have a raise of hands, please? 7-0, we're going into general meeting. Okay, that was the end of reorg. We are now starting with our general Board of Education meeting for July 6th, if anybody's following along. So I just want to start off, do you have a question? Yes. You can't hear, yeah, so we have to be very, right, okay. So what I want to just start off by saying is that as a new board, so this is we just finished our reorganizational meeting, and as a new board, we are now starting off the school year. I would like to say that as we are starting the school year, as you can see, we're kind of also starting to, by evaluating ourselves and our processes. One of the examples that you see is the way we're sitting. This is a work session of the board, which is why we're all sitting facing each other and have seating around everywhere else. One of the other changes that you will see tonight is that we will be addressing community comments, which will include revisiting the comments that we have had at past board meetings at the following board meetings. So on tonight's agenda, you will see that we will be discussing or revisiting or answering some of the questions people may have had at the past community comments. That is one of the things that we're trying. We are committed as a board of 7 to trying new things and making all our systems a little better. We're asking, though, that everybody be patient with us, because we are, as we try new things, we may have to reevaluate and see if they are working or not working. This is now our opportunity for community comments. Any community comments? The podium is over there. Please identify yourself for
3 minutes? Are we doing 3 minutes?
You want to come over here?
Amazing, they check these things right before the meeting starts, it works, and then you just, it's the meeting, it doesn't work.
Here we go.
Okay.
Sorry for the
You tried, George.
technology.
Yeah, you'll have to bear with me because the mask is horrible here. Well, anyway, good evening. My name is George Borda, and I have a 7th grader. I would like to welcome the new board and read for you some of the words of Dr. Henry Burkell, who, as an educator and academic, is regarded as one of the most respected experts on board operations, not only in New York State, but across the country. He has received many awards from many school board associations, including the award of Most Distinguished Professor of the American Association of the School Administrators. He actually oversaw curriculum and instruction at nearby Manhasset schools. If you ever studied to be licensed as a school district administrator, you probably would have to take a semester course on board operations, such as the one offered at Columbia University and based on Dr. Burkell's work. So as you can see, Dr. Burkell is not some wild-eyed radical, grossly misinformed, but rather he is respected as an educator, someone who saw his profession not as a job, but a mission to make it better. Dr. Burkell writes, one of the most remarkable things about our country is that ordinary citizens control every major public institution. No matter how many experts are on the payroll, they do not and should not have the last word. School boards were created to give ordinary citizens control over the schools in their communities. And these citizens may know less about the operations than the experts they hire, but they should ultimately have the last word on how things should run. Does it make sense? It makes sense if you believe in democracy. The experts are the insiders who, if they were in charge, would run the place for the benefit of the insiders. We should want non-experts to be our board members so that they can govern the place for the rest of us and our children. The practice of many school boards to delegate curriculum and assessment to school administrators leads to lower standards and aggressive intervention by the state and federal government and dysfunctional governance. Dr. Burkell encourages school board members to properly exercise their legal authority over curriculum and assessment to avoid these results. Dr. Burkell states, "This is why non-educators should govern the schools, determine what is to be learned and assess whether it is being learned, and leave the how to the experts and separate the governing responsibilities of a Board of Education from the administrative responsibilities of the superintendent." So I urge you to think seriously about Dr. Burkell's advice and think that as elected trustees, the welfare of our children is in your hands. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Borda. Any other community comments? Going once, going twice? Okay. Thank you. So we need to now do the adoption of the agenda for July 6, 2021. Do I have a motion to adopt? Second. Ms. Brooks, a second. Dr. Block? Sorry. Can we have a vote, please? 7-0. We move now to the report of the superintendent and the enrollment report.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Once again, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Fennick for an enrollment update.
Good evening. Weird. Good evening. So right now we're doing kindergarten enrollment. As of today, our enrollment is 329 students. Our projected enrollment is 391. So we're on course where we should be. And of course, student enrollment, we're updating now.
Okay. Yeah, we'll have an update for total student enrollment in our August board meeting that is forthcoming. The only thing I wanted to say, President Bays, is congratulations once again to our seniors, our 8th graders, certainly our 5th graders, and of course all other students. But we had some wonderful ceremonies, and certainly graduation was very well attended, and it was as close to normal as possible. So I'm very thankful for everybody who was a part of that, and I hope everyone, at least at this point, is enjoying their summer. I'll do some speaking and some discussion items in a few minutes, so I'm going to hold off until then. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hines. So I would like to make a motion to adopt the BOE meeting minutes from May 25th, 2021, a BOE meeting, June 8th, BOE meeting, June 11th, BOE work session of curriculum, June 16th, policy and personnel work session. I think that's them. Do I have a second, please? Ms. Brooks, her hand is up all night. Can we have a vote, please? Mr. Smith, you with us? Yes? Good? Yes?
Ms.
Okay,
Melconian?
7-0. Oh, Ms. Melconian, sorry. 7-0.
Thank you.
Okay, so we move on to our discussion items. And the first item on the agenda for discussion is the strategic plan, and we will hear from our superintendent.
Okay, so thank you. Before I pass it over to Dr. Mioli, for those of us maybe who weren't here at our last June meeting, the board adopted the new vision and mission, which was worked on by many committee members, not only internally, but certainly we had community members as well. And Dr. Mioli had a large hand in making that happen. I'm going to ask that he just gives us a quick status report as to where we are with our next steps now moving forward in relation to our strategic plan moving forward. So, Dr. Mioli.
Thank you, Dr. Hines. There's really, I'll give you a short version and then I'll fill in a little bit. There's kind of 3 things that will happen from here after the adoption of the vision and mission statements. We're going to put some just draft graphics together of the profile of a graduate. For those of you who have been following these reports, that's a kind of a one-page pictorial version of all of those competencies that we want our graduates to leave Schreiber with. And we do want that graphic to have some opportunity for student input in the fall. But just to wrap our heads around what that profile of a graduate might look like, I'm going to be getting just a few drafts together to share with the board and the community, and then we'll move forward from there. So I think that'll give us a better visual to hang our hats on as we move forward than that whole vision and mission statement. And then the third thing, and I'll come back to the second, the third thing is the strategic plan. We've been talking about a strategic plan for quite some time. I think actually Dr. Hines was speaking about it on his first day here in terms of getting a lay of the land and then putting a strategic plan together. As we all know, some stuff happened in between, and even though we are kind of on course or a little behind where I think we would hope to be, but we do fully intend to have a strategic plan put together, and I think it's probably going to be a 5-year. And that brings me to the second piece, and that is what we're going to be doing most of the summer. We actually have started already, is to plan the plan. So I know there's kind of a thought out there like, so now that the vision and mission is in place, like is there like some grand plan that's going to get rolled out, in pieces? And the answer really is no. I don't know if you paid attention or remember the Kennedy speech that I kind of used at the last board meeting to give you a visual of what vision looks like. But he made a really telling statement that, we'll be using metal alloys that have yet to be invented. So setting that vision, he knew he wanted to put men on the moon and bring them back safely to Earth before the end of the 60s. And we knew the kind of pieces that we needed to put into place to do that, but we didn't have all the details. And you can't get to the details until you have that endpoint and you start to think about the places in between. So to summarize all three of those pieces, over the summer I'll be putting together a couple of graphics to share. We'll be planning the plan. Now that we have those competencies, we have the vision and mission statement, we'll be starting to set up what does that look like a year from now, what does that look like 4 years from now, 5 years from now. And we'll be having discussions at many levels that I think we'll be able to have ready by the beginning of October, so that then we can talk about the third piece, which is the strategic plan. So you wouldn't have wanted us to start that without the vision and mission, without the community input, without all the input from all the stakeholders. And so over the summer, we will be doing that, and then we'll start actually the strategic plan itself in early fall.
And if I could just add, thank you, Dr. Miele. It's incredibly important that we have the board involved in this, so you will be updated. Certainly you'll be a part of this. This is not done like in isolation in my office and then we spring it upon the community or the board. So this is a process that will take months to do, but now, as Dr. Miele said, we have the first leg done, which is us starting to build what this plan will look like. And I think there are two schools of thought, no pun intended, when it comes to developing this. There is one that solely potentially focuses on academics, and then there's one that really focuses on everything that happens within a school district, because everything is so incredibly interconnected in so many different ways. So for example, having a 5-year plan potentially for our facilities, having a 5-year plan for all the different departments that we have, maybe even for each one of our schools, and it all ties in with those arrows going back and forth to our North Star, which is our vision and mission. So There's a lot to unpack. We had some preliminary conversations, as Dr. Mioli said before, and we'll certainly apprise the board as we start making more steps moving forward.
Other questions? Okay, Ms. Brooks and then Mr. Smith.
First, congratulations to you and to Julie. Thanks, Dr. Mioli. I knew there were students involved in the Portrait of a Graduate this past year. I know some of them are seniors, so they're leaving. So when are you engaged? Are you filling those positions? Are you starting fresh with new kids? Are you going to each? I mean, are you starting with the kindergartners, and are you what age group? And how are you going to choose which students are involved? And what is your timeline?
So none of the above. Again, we're going to be talking about that this summer. That's part of the planning to plan. And, you know, I'm not going to be doing it. I'm going to be asking you how you want to go about that. I know that you put together a logo with student input, and there was a process put in place that I know you had input into, and so that's really what we'll be doing. I think it is important. I think most of us, all of us, feel that it's important to have student input. I think it's also important to have something that really represents what we believe in and that we're going to have as a graphic for the district for quite some time to come. So there is also a need for it to be, you know, of a quality and a consensus. And so it will come back here.
Great. Thank you very much for the presentation. I think it's great that we're working on a strategic plan. I think every organization needs, you know, at least a 5 or 10 year vision and strategic plan. But I guess, I don't know if this is for Dr. Hines or Dr. Mioli. How are you guys focusing on specific, you know, problem areas or areas that might need immediate attention that, you know, could even, you know, we may miss an entire school year if they're not dealt with by this September as part of this process? How are we going to make sure that things we're not thinking about for 5 years from now that we need to be focusing on today?
So I can answer that. We're doing that right now. So I think there are things that we look at longitudinally. There are things that we look at short term that we know that need to be addressed. That's part of our work over this summer. I think it's safe to say the past week and a half or so since school has been out, everyone's been gone from school. So today really was the first day that we really got to sit down and start thinking about what a timeline is, and then coming up, as you said, Mr. Smith, focusing on things that need to take place right now, focus on, and then things that we'll look at longitudinally, for sure. And I think you would appreciate this, as most of us would. How do we measure whatever it is that we're doing, right? So how do we know it's working over time? Will we adjust after a year if things aren't working, or if they're working really well, will we adjust the other way? So these are things that we'll be framing out and then sharing with the board.
Nobody can hear me. Any other questions? Anybody? Okay. We'll move on to the next discussion, which is the summer school program.
Okay, so just real briefly for those maybe who weren't in attendance or didn't watch the video, I gave an update to the community regarding certain funds that have come our way, and many school districts from the federal government related to the federal coronavirus response and relief supplemental appropriation and the American Rescue Plan. We're very fortunate to offer new programs this summer for our students at multiple levels. And so I just want to give a very brief status report as to what that looks like, how many students we have in attendance in each of the programs. Also, just to let everybody know here at the board, everyone's been hired. So we are done with the hiring as far as that's concerned. So I appreciate everyone's efforts to make sure that we hired some really quality educators to make this happen, and supervision as well. So let me start with our elementary summer program for grades 1 through 5 for ELA and for math. Just to let you know, that program will be starting, at least for our first graders, in August 9th. For grade 2, it starts July 12th, as well as grade 3. And then for grade 4, it's July 12th as well. Then finally with grade 5, it's August 2nd. So in total, for all of our students, 1 through 5 who were part of the reading program, we have 106 students, which is a pretty good number. Now, mind you, this is done virtually. This is not in person. The other ones are in person, so which is why I think we had such a high response rate, which is great news. When it comes to math, we're looking at a total of 65 students in grades 1 through 5. I could break it down by grade level, how many are in ELA, how many are in math. I don't know if you want that specific information, but at least in its totality, we're looking at 106 students for reading and 65 for math. I am quite certain there is crossover, meaning that we may have some students who are in ELA and in math, some students who are specifically going for math and not ELA. I can break down that data further if you would want. Also, I want the board to understand too that I will present how well the program has worked in short order. I'm thinking probably September, once we're able to digest the information that we receive by the end of these programs ending, because some of them don't end until the end of August, so I'd appreciate if you give me at least until September to give you an update. So in total, 106 students for reading and 65 for math. Moving to our special education program for students K through 12. I know Dr. Allen pushed very hard, as well as her staff, to try to get as many students that we can get. And actually what happened was, I know initially we were looking at an elementary reading and math, middle school reading and math, and of course high school and reading and math. You know, and so unfortunately we weren't able to capture as many students as we wanted, but we certainly appreciate the effort, and we're appreciative and thankful for the students who will be attending. So in total we have 18 students. We're not running the high school program. We're running the middle and elementary programs, and we have 6 students for elementary reading. We have 8 students for elementary math. We have 2 students for middle school math and 2 students for elementary reading. And then listen, and this is potentially subject to change as well. We may have some students who want to enter after the program started, and we certainly welcome them. So we budgeted, I want to say about $54,000, and we're saving $45,000, which means we have this money that we can reallocate at some point. Where that's going, we don't know yet, because I want to make sure that I have these conversations with my cabinet so we can update the board as far as where that potential savings is going. And I want to be clear too, this is something that's above and beyond what we already offer, what we're mandated to offer for services for our special education students. But again, it's another way for us to make sure that we address whatever needs that they may have. So we appreciate the parents coming, and that's an in-school program, just to be clear. I know for a Weber we have 3 different sessions that are taking place, so let me just break down the enrollment. And again, I think I said this earlier, it's fully staffed. All of our programs are ready to go. For session 1, which is Spanish, French, and Italian, we have 23 students. For session 2, which will focus on math and science for our students, we have 34 students. And then finally, for session 3, we have 33 students for English and for social studies, for a total of 90 students who will be attending our Weber program. So I'm very thankful for that, and I know our students will have a great experience moving forward. Finally, for our summer music program, which is 4 weeks in length, and we have 2 different sessions for our students. The first session, which actually began today, we have 63 students for session 1, and this is grades 4 through 8. And then for session 2, we have 54 students for a total of 117 students. So all in all, I'm appreciative of the board supporting the summer school programs. We will assess them in the end, and then we will certainly update the board as far as how successful they were. And then whatever tweaks we would have to make or adjustments, we would make sure that takes place for the following summer, because we want to do this again.
Thank you. Other questions? Ms. Brooks? Can I just interject? We've been told, I'm sorry, before you ask, we've been given feedback that we sound very muffled on the live stream. So I'm going to ask the board if we're okay with, when we're speaking, to maybe take off the masks and then just put them back on again so that maybe we can help with people who are watching. Is everybody okay with that? Yes? Are you okay with that? Okay, so Ms. Brooks, if you want, please, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that rundown. I'm curious, for the elementary school, actually for any of the summer programs that didn't involve special education, how was it determined that those students could go to summer school? Was it anybody who wanted to come, or was there an assessment done by the respective schools?
So the teachers made recommendations as well as the building principals working with the families. As far as the specific criteria, I don't have that, but I can certainly update the board as what that is.
That's okay. I wasn't sure if anybody could come or if it was a recommendation. And also for the special ed kids at the high school, I'm assuming you're not running the high school program. So are there children whose parents or their kids who have been left out because it wasn't cost effective for the high school to run the program, or there was no interest at all in the high school program?
There was no interest at all in the high school program.
Okay, good.
We
So
had
no,
students identified, and we did reach out to parents, but they didn't take us up on it.
okay, that's actually what I was hoping to hear, that nobody was left out. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from anyone? Oh, any other questions from anyone? Oh, Rachel.
I have a question about the cost savings. You mentioned the $45,000. Is that the savings from the high school program not running, or are we saving some money too because the elementary and the middle school program for that are on the smaller side too? Did we save on some staffing as well?
Yeah, we saved definitely at the high school for not running that, but we did have to collapse some sections because the numbers were so small. So we saved kind of elementary and middle school as well. Thank you.
Anyone else? No. Okay. Right? No more questions? I have to keep remembering, sorry. Okay, so we'll move on to committee reports, which there is really nothing to report about committees at this time since no committees have met, and we won't really be meeting until the fall. So we will skip past that, and we will get to section 11, which are the action items that we have. Now, the action items of 11.1 to 11.6 are part of our consent agenda. Does anyone on our board have any questions or any items that they want to pull out from the consent agenda? I'll give us a couple of minutes to go through them. So it's 11.1, sorry. So since we're all new, it's 11.1 through 11.6. If there are any questions from any board members, Mr. Smith.
Yeah, this is one of the ones I had emailed about, and I just want to understand about this budget transfer. And I know there's going to be a lot of these, but if someone can just explain, you know, how to understand what's happening here.
11.1, right?
Correct.
So it's 11.1.1. So Mary, I think if you could, Ms. Callahan, explain about the budget transfer.
Certainly. In this instance, $68,579 is on a BOCES bill for occupational education, and the monies for that came out of a special education BOCES code. So it went from special education to general education, occupational education. On our website, we certainly do have the full 59 pages of all the district budget codes. We're happy to provide additional information for board members also going forward. But I think you will also see on the next agenda multiple transfers because it's the end of the year. And we are not allowed to close out our budget with any of our codes being in the negative. So that's probably a longer explanation than you wanted, but
So are you making these transfers at the end of the year to basically, you know, take from Peter to pay Paul, so to speak, or is it actually because the expense belongs in the different code? Just so I just want to understand.
Right.
Yeah.
In this instance, we're taking from one code to pay a specific bill. And the next agenda, you will see codes that are unrelated. You might see monies going into the curriculum code, coming out of the business office code, simply to make it so that there is no code in a negative status.
So in next year's budget process, are those, I guess, kind of so in the future year budget process, are those codes, I guess, rebalanced based on the end of the year? And then
We
it's just,
do try to do that, yes, every year.
okay,
Yeah.
thank you very much, I understand.
Okay. Keep in mind, though, that your 21-22 budget is already set. So you can't expect Ms. O'Hara to be coming to you and take the brunt of a budget that I put together for her.
I'm sure if you put it together, it's very good.
Okay.
Okay, other than that question, did you have any other questions? Deb, did you want to point something out for consent?
No, I don't want to pull anything out. I just have a question about the
Take
desk
off your
shields.
mask, please, sorry.
Are we disposing of all of the desk shields? Is the 6,600, is that all the desk shields we have on
I
premises?
can't hear you.
Are we disposing of all of the desk shields? The number in here was 6,600, I think. Is that everything we have? Do you know?
I believe that's an approximate number that came from the Buildings and Grounds Department in the hopes of being able to sell those to a vendor who was purchasing them at a cost by the pound. So we're hoping to recoup some money of that expenditure for this year.
You good? Okay, if there are no more questions on the consent agendas 11.1 verse to 11.6, can I make a motion for us to vote on approving those items? Can I make motions?
You may make a motion. We always need a second.
Okay, but I can, okay.
Yes, you may.
So I make the motion for us to move to vote on approve 11.1 to 11.6. Do I have a second? Ms. Epstein, may we have a vote, please? All in favor, 7-0.
Mr. Smith, did you vote? I'm sorry.
Oh, did you not vote? I'm sorry.
I'm deciding if I want to ask you to take the desk shields out, because I don't know that I want to vote yes on that. We haven't talked about it.
Okay, so let's go back. I'm sorry. I thought you were okay with your questions. Do you want to have a discussion on that item? It's item number.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a big deal that people in the community. Sorry, I think it's a big deal that people in the community may have thoughts about, that we just spent tremendous money on those and now we're, essentially throwing them away. And I don't know that I want to be part of voting on that in a consent agenda.
So, okay, so
Yeah.
I think what we can discuss, and I think, Mary, the question that you asked, or that you brought up, is that we are not throwing them away, but we are selling them, right? So what happens if we don't? I know it's not for a lot of money. We paid a lot more than probably what we're going to recoup, but do you have any sense of what savings or what it would cost us to keep them?
The cost to keep them would mean putting them in a container somewhere in the school district. If there's a feeling of the board that you want to postpone this to some future time, that's quite all right. It's just that they're in the way right now in terms of cleaning for the summer. They've been removed from all the desks, so they're just sort of piling
Where are
up
they
at
now?
each building.
Where they're in each building.
Yes.
So we would do we know if we have the facilities to store them here, or would we have to rent a container?
We do have containers because we had furniture that were stored there all year that are now being emptied so that those can go back into classrooms. It's simply that we rent the containers, so we continue to pay the cost until the board chooses to make that decision.
But okay, so I think the question for me at least would be to weigh what the cost is to keep them versus selling them now at whatever it is that we're getting per pound. And so am I sensing, Adam, that you want to pull this and maybe discuss
I think we
this
should
in
pull
August?
it separately, or maybe even, I just want to understand if we're absolutely certain that we're never going to need them again, and if we've looked at other possible uses, if anyone else in the district has use for plexiglass, maybe for shop or for art or something, just like before we're just dumping it at 5 cents a pound or whatever we're getting, just because we invested so much and the material is quite expensive to, if we ever need it again for something.
Well, we are only getting 10 cents a pound. We have had requests from our teachers, and some of those shields have been set aside for them. I'm sorry, I don't know the cost of the container per month, but I don't think it could be that extreme, that if you want to hold on to them at least till September and see what happens with the opening of school, that it would be a problem to put this off as long as we can put them in another location and continue cleaning.
Is that what the board is, go ahead, yeah.
I just
Take
want to
off
make
your
a
mask when you speak though, because we really can't hear.
Thank you. So Adam, I thought about this as we were doing the consent agenda, and I was not necessarily comfortable with it. And then I thought about a couple of areas. The first is that there was absolutely no evidence that the desk shields were actually protective, and I think the science is relatively clear on that. So even if there is a slide next year because of seasonality of COVID, I think it's highly unlikely that we'll need them again. Don't mind the thunder. So that's the reason. I agree with your point that there could be opportunities, probably not to get a higher price, but that there could be opportunities that teachers want to be creative with crafts projects, but it sounds like a few are being set aside. So maybe if we can just get a little bit of detail on it, because it would be a shame if some students wanted to do something clever with it and we had, given away for pennies on the dollar. So that's the reason that it's getting my support.
So just to be clear, we have reached out to our technology teachers, to our art teachers who took us up on this offer, which was great. Some of our students who graduated wanted to keep them as keepsakes, so they certainly have that as well. When it comes to a cost analysis, we can certainly maybe at the August meeting provide you with some detail as far as how much it would cost to store in a container versus how much it may cost if we, potentially sold them at 10 cents a pound. So we can have that information at the next board meeting.
I'm glad to hear that these efforts have been made and it isn't just like a wholesale discarding of them. So that generally satisfies me. I might suggest that we might maybe offer to leave some out if people want to grab them, but otherwise I'm okay to move ahead with voting on it. Yeah.
Okay, so is everybody else okay for us voting for keeping this item 11.2 on? Yeah, Rachel.
Can you hear me? Oh, sorry. So since the issue has been raised, I'm totally fine with it as well. I think 10 cents a pound seems to me a desk shield probably doesn't weigh more than 10 pounds. So we're talking a very small amount of money. It's about getting rid of it so we don't have to deal with it and not having it cost us anything. So maybe we can just add the caveat too that we'll put the word out again. Like if more art teachers, if more students or whoever, for $1 a desk shield, they can have at it.
Okay, so we are back on with the consent agenda 11.1 to 11.6. I make a motion for us to go ahead and accept those items. What am I saying? Do I have a second?
Julie had seconded.
Oh, Julie already
previously.
seconded. So can I have a vote, please? Are we voting? Everybody in favor? Yes? Deb, I don't see your hand. Okay, 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have policy number policy number 6800 on for a first reading. It's accounting of fixed assets. It is on for our first reading. It will be put on for a adoption at our next board meeting. Moving on, we have the Board of Education committees, correct? Is that the right thing? Yes, okay. And we also have Board of Education, we have the Dignity Act committees. So do we vote on that, Mary? Yes?
Yes, you do.
Okay, so I would like to make a motion to vote on the Board of Education committees and the Dignity Act committees. Do I have a second? Ms. Epstein, does anybody have any questions on the committees? Oh, before I make the motion, does anybody have a question? I'm getting corrected. Okay, so, sorry. The number of the agenda is item number 13. It's stapled, so I can't see it. Okay, so may I ask for, so I'm making a motion since there are no questions to accept the Board of Education committees. Do I have a second? Ms. Epstein, may I have a vote, please? 7-0. Thank you. Okay, now we're on to old business. And so what I, yes, I'm sorry.
Excuse me,
Did I miss?
My agenda has 13 point,
I think I blended out. Is that the Dignity Act?
1.2, the committees for the board policy. That was a different number than 13.1. You have two resolutions. The first resolution is for the Dignity Act
Okay, so
coordinators.
it's 13.1. So which one did we just vote on? I put So we are only starting from last meeting. We're going one meeting back, right? We're not going, I know that there were plenty of community comments throughout 2021 and 2020. We're not going back that far, just this particular last meeting. I am going to ask the board for us to consider after Dr. Hines discusses the, what we have pointed out, how do we want to proceed so that we don't lose track of the comments? So what we've Or they can also, if it comes to them during the meeting, they can send that afterwards, or right, we should, or at least we should have some sort of sign-in. We used to. I don't know if we still have the sign-in over there, but we used to have a sign-in sheet where we would also ask for information. So maybe that's the one thing we do. Any other comments, ideas? Rachel, you had your hand up.
I'm in agreement with Mr. Smith. He even beat me to using the word onerous, which is exactly what I was thinking. I think the fewer hurdles to having the community have an ability to comment, the better. I think people should be able to speak spur of the moment. I don't think people should feel that they need to write something to us like it's an essay in order to be able to get up there and speak. I think it's on us to figure out how to capture the comments so that we can follow up on it if need be. And a start is definitely having people put down their name, but the whole thing is recorded. So we could set up some sort of system where somebody transcribes the comment later on, or at least captures the essence of it so that we can follow up on it.
I just want to be careful that we don't address, if there are 10 different comments basically saying the same thing, I want us to feel comfortable bucketing those essentially together. And then the community member, if they think that theirs is somehow different, they can speak again. But if there's 10 comments on one subject matter, I feel like we should be able to address that in one response rather than 10 unique responses.
Yeah, and Emily, one thing going off of what Dr. Block just said is, something I brought up to you privately is we could also maybe look into doing some type of ticketing system for emails that are coming in, whether it's to us or certain administrators, and we can see patterns of the same topic is being brought up at community meetings and by email, and then we can say, hey, we had 17 points of contact on this, and I think it'll help us to not have everything getting lost in email chains, and there's systems that are quite easy and inexpensive to look into, like Zendesk or something.
Does anybody else have any thoughts? No. Okay, so am I hearing that what we should do is make sure that we have the clipboard there where everyone signs in, and that we will go through the tape basically to make sure that we haven't missed any comments? Is that what I'm hearing? Everybody okay with that? And that Dr. Block did point out that we're going to put things together, not address every single one. Okay, so Dr. Hines, I turn it. Oh wait, I'm sorry, Ms. Callahan.
Could I just ask for clarification? Are you expecting to have the questions responded to at a subsequent meeting or at the same meeting?
At subsequent.
At a
Subsequent meeting if we've had information to report. And we may not. Every comment doesn't have an answer. But if there's a question about a topic, so as you see from tonight's agenda, if there's a theme of a question, we'll try to address it. Wait, Ms. Brooks has her hand up, and Ms. Epstein, and then you, Dr. Hines.
So while we're starting a new year, I just wanted to remind the public, anybody who's listening, that there is a newly revamped chain of command public complaints policy, so that when you go up to the microphone, you not make it personal about your own child or a specific teacher, and just to review the policy before you make a statement so that we know that you're making an appropriate statement at the time, and then we're happy to answer it subsequently. Just for a point of clarification also, if going back to look at the record, I'm assuming we can utilize the minutes from the district clerk to look at the community comments, or is that something where we only can go back to the tape?
You would have to go back to the tape. The Board of Education minutes simply record the actions of the board. So it's going to show what time the meeting started, who made a motion, who seconded, whether it was a unanimous vote, etc. It's not a narrative in any way.
Perfect. So then can I just also suggest for the board that if someone does have a written statement, that we can ask that it be provided to us just in case the tape is muffled or hard to hear, the microphones aren't working so well, and we can just make sure we have a double check. Of course, it wouldn't be a requirement, it would just be an addition to help out with it. Does that sound, that's where I'm suggesting.
Yes, did you want to say something?
I think that's great. To whatever extent anybody has a written comment, it's always helpful to submit it. But I was going to say, I volunteer to write them down. I'll just write them down.
I was actually going to suggest that. I was going to suggest, can I have a board member raise their hand to be responsible for getting all of the right information? So Rachel, you volunteered. Thank you so much. Okay. Now, Dr. Hines, if you could respond to some of the comments that we had at the last meeting.
Sure. So let me start with number one, which was fall reopening, which will be here before we know it. So as you know, all school districts are anxiously awaiting this new guidance from the New York State Department of Health. We're hoping we'll receive it sooner than later. But in the meantime, as we are waiting, I want to be very clear about what September will look like for our kids. So first, let me say two things. All sports, whether it's a Weber, whether it's a Shriver, it's returning back to normal. So that's be fully operational. Unless Section 8 deems something that we have to follow up with, we're looking at all systems go. If a child's going to the library, which they will, they can take out books. When it comes to classrooms in particular, they will have their classroom libraries, they'll have their typical normal classroom, as it was pre-COVID. After school care, for some of the programs that we have, that will be fully operational. When it comes to arrival and dismissal, we're still working on that, but we're looking at it being as close to normal as it was pre-COVID. When it comes to actually the bargaining units, it's incredibly important that Dr. Shields and I sit down with the bargaining unit presidents and we talk about what our thoughts are as we draw closer to the reopening in September, but I'll be reaching out to all our bargaining unit presidents in short order. And then, as I said before, any of this can change on a dime when it comes to the changes coming from the New York State Department of Health and or SED or our esteemed governor. There really are two things that stand in the way for us to be, I would say, fully functional like we were pre-COVID. One is the guidance that relates to lunch for our students, and the second has to do with everyone's favorite topic, mask wearing within the school and what that looks like and what that sounds like. So we will continue to unpack this over the summer. We want to have an FAQ for our parents before school starts. So you will have information certainly before the school year begins, but we have some work to do over the summer. So that's where we are with fall reopening.
And Dr. Hines, the individual buildings will be sending out information to the families?
Yeah, so those are the things that Dr. Shields and I will certainly work on, but yes, it would make more than sense for the buildings, specific buildings, whether it's the principals or local principals, to share with their school community what that looks like, for sure.
Do you have a sense, based on the conversations you've had with other Nassau County superintendents, when we expect or when we can expect guidance?
Is this live still? Because I want to be careful. It's all over the map. I think there are many who don't have any faith that, as far as when it'll come here. I think we have some who are hoping it'll be here tomorrow or yesterday. But I think if I had to guess at this point, it's probably going to be, I was hoping for middle of July, but that's next week. So I'm hoping by the end of July. What I do know is that we continue to push our county executive and certainly those who are in power at the New York State Department of Health to share with us sooner than later. So if we don't have anything by our next board meeting, I'll be driving up to Albany probably with about 10 other superintendents because we've had it when it comes to receiving information at the 11th hour. But as I said before, two of the biggest deliverers really have to do with lunch. And those are the things we have to focus on because, you know, with the way lunch is set up, especially at our elementary schools, it prohibits some other things to take place that typically would. So more to come when it comes to that.
Okay, next item that you
seems that that has been a concern for a number of years. So last week, I caught Mr. Schreiber-Weiser, and we had a conversation about this. I asked him to do some research to look at other school districts as far as what they do from a policy perspective. I also asked him to reach out to his coaches to gain their perspective, which I think is incredibly important as far as what the potential implications are. So we'll have more to share with the board at a later date. I follow up with our new athletic director and hoping for some information relatively soon.
And that would be by the August meeting, right? Because one start.
Yeah, it does. So if it's not at that meeting, I'll certainly update the board shortly thereafter, but we'll try to get everything before that August meeting.
1 second, Mr. Smith, you had asked if we could get 3 peer school districts policy in, I think, that it's been addressed, right?
If you were able to find out exactly what the policy is, and if there is an official policy, and how that policy is recorded and whatnot.
Yeah, and I can tell you right now because I've done some homework already, and as you can imagine, it's like a scattergram. It's all over the map, so it depends on what school district you look at. We want to look at school districts that are larger, but I also think it's important that we need some perspective as far as what other school districts have as well. I think that's important data to have, but I also believe too what the coaches think and feel is incredibly important. And again, I'll share that information.
Just a procedural question, since we just decided this procedural questions. Are we going to be informing the person who asked the question in some way that we are answering it at the next meeting? I mean, I guess going forward it will be fine, right? Because we'll simply announce that maybe this is the way it's going to happen, and we'll have to know. But I think I'm rooms like our formal reopening questioner is very much here this evening, but I think our athletic department question poser is not. Maybe she should send an email or something.
That's why it's important to have their information, so I don't have, I mean, he emailed us. He did email us, so we can respond to his email. He did email us at one point, so we'll respond. But that's why it's important for us to make sure that we document properly who's asking, who's making the comments, but we will respond. It's not coming.
This just could open up further conversation because it's really about breaks and might go beyond athletics in terms of policies.
Are you saying there are other departments that don't allow students to go on vacation? And certainly we hear from others. Okay.
I can guarantee that will happen. So it does have implications for other areas for sure.
Okay, so let's move on to the last community comment follow-up, which was about the diversity, equity, and inclusion one.
Sure. So we have one more meeting. It was actually scheduled for this Friday, but we're pushing it back to I think it's 23rd of July. We actually may even have another half day, depending on where we are after that particular meeting. And then after that, I can update the board as far as what the next steps are. I'm predicting we won't have a report until now, maybe September, October. But again, I'm ballparking with that, but we still have a meeting and a half left. And then again, I can share what the next steps are after that.
Okay, any questions from the recap of the community comments from any of the board members? No. Okay. We move on to item number 15, new business. Any new business? No. We move on to item number 16, opportunity for the community to be heard again. Please, if you have any comments, podium is there for you.
First of all, congratulations to the new members of the board for being seated today. We're looking forward to your new term. One question I did not hear addressed today what is the intent with the diversity committee? That was a committee that met several times during this past school year, but then subsequently had its meetings canceled for the remainder of the year, I believe starting in February. The work of dismantling racism is an ongoing thing that we need to continually be aware of and continually be working on. There are just two examples I wanted to bring to people's consciousness regarding the Olympics, since everyone's maybe thinking about the Olympics now. But recent decision by the Federation, the International Federation for Swimming, bans a type of skull cap that was designed for people with, for black people with large hair to be able to wear a swim cap. They decided to not allow this as approved equipment, thus thereby discouraging people with natural hair to participate in swimming. And also one of the sprinters in the relay team has been effectively banned from the Sochi Olympics for testing positive for marijuana, which we can all agree is not a performance enhancing drug. I bring up these two cases to highlight that racism is not necessarily racist intent. It's not necessarily somebody saying, hey, we're going to get this person out of this event because they're black or because they're of a particular race. It is a system that has been ingrained and has been baked in to the decisions that we make. I was glad to hear tonight that the board decided to not require written statements being submitted in community comments for people to have them put on the record. One of the 13 tenets of white supremacy, or one of the 13 characteristics of white supremacy is the worship of the written word, discounting the types of communication that traditional cultures and cultures other than white culture have valued. So speaking is one of those types of forms of communication. And if somebody stands up here and speaks, they are just as valid in their opinion as somebody who writes a text. And I appreciate the board making sure that that onerous requirement is not something that we will require from our community. I would like to know when the diversity committee is going to be reconvening. I'd like to know when the diversity committee is going to be reconvening and how we're going to be establishing community involvement in that committee.
Thank you, Mr. Wolf. We will respond at the next meeting.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to just remind everyone that the next meeting dates are August 3rd, and then after that it is September 21st. Don't we have a second meeting in August? August 17th or something like that? You do not have one scheduled at this time? No. Okay, I thought I saw one. Could be wrong. Okay, so the next meeting of the board will be on August 3rd, followed by September 21st. I believe that we are adjourned, unless there are any other thing the board wants to say. Okay, we are adjourned, everyone. Good evening. Oh wait, sorry, Deborah, sorry.
I'm just going to make a shameful plug. So the reason why we're not in the auditorium today is because the Port Summer Show is reversing the Reese. So for those of you who want to continue to support the students in the district over the summer, the show will be Thursday the 5th, Friday the 6th, Saturday the 7th, and Sunday the 8th. In person.